Okay, so here it finally is, my long overdue review of the Huawei P20 Pro, and I don't need to introduce it, so don't worry, no long intro this time, because if you haven't heard of it, then I definitely can't help you anyway. So let's just jump straight into review, and let me just tell you that I will try to keep this review a little bit more compact and just tell you the things that you probably haven't heard from somewhere else and go into the main things that you should know, but not into every little detail that I don't think is maybe all that important. But one thing that I want to get into is, for example, already the design. This is a 6.1-inch device, but with the notch, so it's actually a little bit smaller than most 6-inch phones with 2x1, which is something super nice, makes this phone actually noticeably narrower than most 6-inch phones with 2x1, which also makes usability just easier. It is a little bit thicker though due to the big battery, which I think actually it needs, because the keyring doesn't seem quite as efficient for me, but the rest though, in-hand feel, one-hand usability obviously won't be all that great. But I also have to say, when it comes to the build quality, it feels a little bit more hollow, definitely noticeably more hollow than the Mate 10 Pro did. And all the seams here don't quite seem as amazing anymore, also the buttons. So it feels like they are kinda, lacking a little bit quality compared to best. And if you have seen the bend test from Jerry's Everything, you know that it actually doesn't hold up that well. Doesn't change the fact that it is still on a very high level, but not quite as high as it was in the past, like for example with the P10 and like I said with the Mate 10. But other than that, all nice. Obviously the camera will stick out and I don't need to go into all the rest, but I want to go into the fingerprint reader, which still works super fast, but the display, as you can see, doesn't turn on quite as fast as on especially the P10 anymore, which was pretty much instantly. The fingerprint reader is still 5 gold stars, but with the screen turn-on time, the whole unlock process just by now gets 5 stars. But we also get, as you can see here, face unlock, which if I hold it up to my face actually works really nice. It takes a little bit longer here to turn on the screen to make it seem a little bit faster than it actually is, but comparing with some other phones that have this feature, really nice. But if we talk already about the design, we have to talk about the notch, which is a huge no-go for many. For me it's actually not though, because we have the option to hide the notch. And even though it doesn't obviously completely hide it, because in sunlight especially you will see that it's not 100% blacked out, but in my opinion this is an absolutely good enough solution. It's not perfect, but it gets the job done, besides maybe due to a few facts, like for example that if you are in Instagram, it actually cuts off the part which is underneath and you can't really even see that, so you kind of have to know what buttons there are and just then press it. So a little bit of a weird thing, maybe they can fix that, actually they should. But other than that, what I want to also mention is that the oleophobic coating actually is a little bit subpar compared to the very best ones out there, because all P20 phones out of the box come with a screen protector, which is good, but I simply don't like that and I wanted to know how good the oleophobic coating is. And if I take this phone out of my pocket, it's actually smeared up very much all the time, and the cleaning is still easy and it's not as bad as it was in the P10, but it is a little bit worse than on the best ones out there. Bezels, nice on the side. Not super small, but smaller than on many other phones, and on the top and bottom, that's just for you to decide. Fingerprint reader on the front, just get used to it, but it's not an issue, especially since the unlock with the face works that good. Now, about the display, I measured 735 lux, which is not the same as nits in some cases, especially on an AMOLED display. It is though very bright, but I can't really tell how much, because an IPS display just measures a little bit different. We still have the options, for example, for color modes, as you can see here, normal, vivid, warm, cold and such, and we have natural tones, eye comfort and all that, which is nice and would be even better. Of course, the screen resolution is smart. You can go even low to 720p, which makes no sense at all. I have to say, this display on its own, with the OLED blacks, with the white that is set right, with the colors, is a pleasing display, absolutely. Viewing angles are stable and everything, but it still has screen dimming. So for those people who don't know what screen dimming is, I don't think I need to get into it, because it won't bother you, especially if you use auto brightness. If you know what screen dimming is, and you have seen some of my previous reviews where I complained so much about because I absolutely hate it, then you know it's there. It's a little bit more subtle since the last update that I got 3 days ago, but it's still there. I will give it a 5 stars rating for the display, just because it is a nice display. Obviously it's not the sharpest one anymore, but the qualities are absolutely there, and we don't really have many more high-res displays that are still better and overall, so still a top job. Now what about the speaker? And I know many don't like this song, but unless you find me something better than I can use, I will still keep using it. Yes, we still have the dual speaker arrangement, and this is an absolutely 5-star level. And by the way, now we have seen the display dimming in action, because this was way brighter before I entered the app. As you can see, now it goes brighter again, and it will dim down. So personally, if you want a fixed brightness manually, you just can't achieve that. And for example, there is also sunlight mode, which you should know, which by default is the activated, which boosts contrast very ugly. And in that case, you might want to go into the developer options and turn that off. But getting back to the sound, absolutely top. It's very loud, it's a very full, rich sound, and this is one of the best dual speakers since we don't really have many front-facing speakers anyways. Now, headphone jack obviously isn't a thing anymore, so you need that dongle. And through this dongle, I have to say, I am, as usually, not impressed. And actually, it feels a little bit less than it was in the Mate 10 Pro. Not very loud. For an in-ear, it will be good enough. But for an over-ear with especially some higher impedance, no chance at all, because it's just not loud enough. Quality is okay, but it's still actually not even good enough anymore. I would say it's maybe at best slightly below average. But let's kill all apps and go into the performance. And I have to say, even though this phone, as you can see, launches apps quite nice and quick, I have to knock off half a point. Not because it's not smooth, because it is. If it is, and that's my issue. This phone is not consistent, not yet. And now things are too bright because, as you can see, every time you switch, it just does whatever it wants to with the brightness. Super annoying thing for me. It is smooth, like I said, when it is, but so many occasions, example for it, here in this case, Google Plus has so much lag going on. And someone actually asked me if there is this slow scrolling stutter. I've actually checked it because I did not know of that, but if you slowly scroll, and I'm not sure if the video will catch this up, it actually stutters. I actually don't see this now, but maybe to fix that. But when I had it a week ago, this was still there. Which shows, though, that they can improve the performance, because I know the View 10 had noticeably more consistent performance and ran just about as fine. So I know the chip has the potential to be absolutely smooth and absolutely consistent. But at the point that I'm reviewing this, is just not the case, and I will knock half a point off of it, because this is, after all, just because of the consistency, not a proper full flagship phone. And I know many people actually say this is faster than an 845 or 835, but when I used this phone for a week and then switched to an 845 device, like for example here, the Black Shark, the difference is like night and day. You feel everything is just lighter, smooth, and so on. Otherwise, in terms of gaming, it's top, absolutely. It gets a little bit warm, but due to the heat now, it's absolutely normal. So battery, a full charge, I actually didn't measure it, but I did it on the Mate 10 Pro, so it should be around 1.5 hours. Few minutes for less or more doesn't really change the fact that it's great. Which is the battery life as well still, but I also just have to consider a few more things. Because what I got is about 6.5 to 7 hours on mobile data and 8.5 to 9 hours on Wi-Fi, which is like half an hour on average less than it was on the Mate 10 Pro, which with the same SoC, with the same battery size. But my usage could have changed a little bit, but from other reviewers that I know, they said it's a little bit less than on the Mate 10, but half an hour doesn't really matter. But I also have to just mention that I achieved those values with the screen dimming. So if the screen would have stayed always with the brightness that I would have wanted to, it would have maybe been a little bit worse. Not by much, but still enough to be mentioned. Overnight though, standby drain was really good in some cases. On mobile data, not quite as good, but on Wi-Fi, super pleasing. Now, software. Where should I start? Yes, you have the option for an app drawer, and as you have seen, quite a delay actually, but you also can use it without the app drawer. And no, I'm not using a different theme. This is stock. Before someone else tells me that I'm using a kind of different launcher, this is stock. This is also stock. I've tried though, because I really like Huawei's themes though. I tried the themes and there are really great ones out there. Now in terms of features, we have the feature to make the screen smaller. We have the option to rearrange the buttons, and we have so much stuff going on, as you can see here. For the sound, we have Dolby Atmos, as you can see here for the speaker, and more sound settings. So you definitely by now get actually quite a lot of nice features. We still have the knuckle gestures, which is something that I still like a lot. For example, a double knock for the screenshot, a knock to make on multi-window. So actually, I like the look once you adjust it. I like the functionality, but there are just a few things that I can't get past off, because, for example, the screen dimming, the issue with, for example, the notch is something that we have to mention, but it doesn't really bother me so much. The optimization is not where it should be, because I know the phone could run better, and there are a few minor quirks like apps crashing sometimes, but not a big thing. Update support from our side is usually okay, but nothing really out of the super spectacular. The speed that they update with is actually quite okay for such a heavily skinned UI. So now it's time for the camera, and now I know I'm gonna piss off a lot of people, but I'm actually not gonna show you a single picture for the reason that this phone has been reviewed, especially in the camera department, so many times already. And you usually complain about all my same motives ever anyways, so I don't need to get into that. I'm just gonna tell you what I think about. So front camera is really good, quite very good, so 4.5 stars for that, but it could be sharper. Therefore, though, it has the really good bokeh mode or the portrait mode if you want that. So not the best quality itself, but the bokeh for people where it's important can make up for that. The video quality is not all that great because it overexposes noticeably and it's just not as amazing. And what I don't get at all is why it every time starts the video in beauty mode with 720p. You have to disable that and then you are in 1080p, where the quality is good, it's fine. Low light, I would say phenomenal, and I will give it 5 stars for the night mode, because the night mode, I have to say, is absolutely spectacular. If you have the time to wait 4 seconds, so it has to be an inanimate object, you can get so much better pictures in low light than with everything else. Normal low light pictures without that mode are still very good. So overall, I will give it 5 stars because I'm so impressed by the night mode. And even though it's not quite the same as a real 4 second exposure, it is impressive of how much more details it can get out, even in pictures where you have enough light, because you can use this as some kind of advanced HDR mode. So super impressed with that. Main cam, I will give it 5 stars, but not for the AI cam, because what I actually did most of the time after I've used it the first time with AI, I turned it off, because I still think same as on the Xiaomi Mi Mix 2S, the AI mode pretty much just boosts colors, oversaturates them quite heavily. Now, not as heavy as on the Mi Mix 2S, but it does happen, and pics just look noticeably more unnatural. If you want pleasing, impressive pictures, use the AI mode and does a great job. But if you want natural and great, there are actually cams that can do it better, like for example Sony, and in some cases even Samsung. So I would just say leave AI off and you get really nice pictures, but they aren't as mind-blowing as many want you to believe. Yes, 5-star camera without any issues, but it's not the holy grail of cameras like many turn out to be. Yes, of course, we have 3x zoom, 5x zoom, which is also nice, and a few other things like, for example, kind of best portrait mode and all that, which is super nice, but it's not like so much better than anything else. And then there is the video that is not on a flagship level, because after all, too much artifacting. You can change between H.265, which is for better efficiency, or 264, which I use for better compatibility with my video editors and such. The video is nice. Artifacting, yes. No stabilization on 4K, 1080p. So I'm actually fine because I usually have a steady hand, but video quality wasn't really anything to brag home about. So that's finally it. Here's the rating, as objective as it can be. And what I'm this time actually not gonna really do is recommend this phone or not, because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tell you this. From a reliable source, I know that Huawei is actually subsidizing these phones as crazy. I've seen it here on contracts, and I know people who got this phone for 280, 240 euros on a contract, which is crazy cheap if you consider it costs 900. And I'm not quite sure if by the time you watch this video you can still get the Bose headphones as well, but that actually improves the value. But for $900 or euros, I have to just mention a few things that some people might be wanting from a flagship where I don't really bother so much, and that's why I did mention it. No QHD display. I don't really care so much about that. We don't have wireless charging, but therefore the bigger battery. If you would have wireless charging, the phone would be bigger. Just keep that in mind. And the rest, though, I have to say the basic qualities of this phone are absolutely amazing. Like the display, at least potentially, without the screen dimming. The speaker is one of the best ones. Performance can be, but it is not. And then great battery life, great design, build quality, great camera. So everything is amazing. Now here's the part where I'm gonna switch off objective mode and just tell you that this is now what I'm gonna say is my absolute subjective and personal opinion. And you don't have to like that, and you definitely don't have to care about it, but what you should do is at least accept it. As positive as I was in this review, and I try to show it as I try to show my subjectivity as little as possible, but on the P10 last year, I said I don't like that phone even though it's great. Here I'm gonna say it's even greater. It's better than the P10 was back then at its time, but now I actually hate it. And that's more of a thing because of Huawei and the stubbornness to kinda actually fix issues, like for example the screen dimming. I've heard so many times on old phones they will fix it, and it never seems to happen. For example, on the Mate 10 Pro, someone told me with the last update he got like 3 or 4 days ago, it's fixed now. Until I personally see it, I won't believe it, because I thought at first after the last update that it happened here as well. It did not. And personally, the screen dimming is just a thing that I can't accept, because if I set manual brightness to a certain level, I don't want the system to interfere with that brightness and make the screen in that case actually very dull. Because with that dullness, I can't enjoy this 5-star display, and I would actually knock off like at least 1 star, if not more, because the experience of a great display that you can't fully use to its potential is just super annoying. And the performance, like I said, it is on a top-notch level, and it can be somewhere in between on 835 and 845 in most situations with a great speed. It just is not consistent enough, and they can fix that. But considering that the Mate 10 Pro didn't achieve that, at least not by now from what I know from other people that still have it, that is disappointing. So personally, I don't like it. But if I don't consider all of that, it's a great phone. It can be easily recommended. That's why everyone is raving about it so much about it. But this is still a phone that I would say most people will just get for the camera. If you want some other better things, it's hard to find, because like I said, the overall basic is good, but I don't want to stretch this any further. So I guess you know the objective part, you know my personal part, which you can think about what you want. But I just think as a reviewer who makes reviews that simply aren't always 100% objective, such a thing does not exist. I wanted to let you know what I think of it. Okay? Okay. Until next time.